above all the wires, above, and like drop it down, and I'm like, this motherfucker. I spent all day fixing all of his fuck ups. Oh, and the door speakers, he left on the floors, face up, put boxes on top of it, hardware, everything. I move the boxes, find the speaker, giant hole through it.
Well, don't you know
the other one? Both those tabs, you know, the Hondas, like you like slide them in, then bolt them in from the top. Both those tabs are broken. On the other one, so I'm like, we're literally ordering every part for this car because he just broke it or just lost it.
Is he gonna get fired?
My boss was like, if he was here right now, I'd be punching him in the fucking face. I would not hesitate.
I thought speaker fabric was like made of strong like Kevlar material. It could handle anything.
Maybe in a Porsche.
You do realize it's a Honda. I know this is a Touring, but even the Tourings, like, except for the Accords. The Accords are the only ones that come with like a fabric-ish kind of thing. These ones are your typical vinyl, like...
Shit, yeah. Like,
yeah, back in August,
Asian
the sub went in the Audi. It started to crackle, and I have no tolerance for shit like that, so I ordered one that day.
Yeah.
But I ordered the Bang & Olufsen one.
Oh, yeah, those are really nice. Bang & Olufsen.
Yeah, but I don't have, like, the rest of the sound system for it, so it's just, like... That one was actually a nice cloth.
Yeah.
Like, fabric speaker.
100% cotton. The fabric of life.
The Bang & Olufsens are really nice, but the Porsche, they have the Burmeister. Those are really nice too.
It's all about those Sony Explodes.
Yeah. Well, my Trans Am, like one of the tweeters, like went in it a year ago. So like, whenever I listen to music, I keep it like just low enough before it starts rattling. I haven't bothered.
It doesn't sound like it's queefing.
Yeah, I haven't bothered to change it out yet. But that's like a monsoon system or some like cheap ass GM shit. But it
sounds like it's time for an upgrade.
Yeah, I'm just gonna replace it with the factory one.
What cars came with the Infinity sound systems?
my cars.
Not Infinity.
The Hyundai Tiburon.
Yeah, the Hyundais did. Those are.
And they weren't too bad.
I've heard the Lincolns actually have really nice, like, they have like a mode, it's like a stage mode or something, and it like sounds like you're at the damn concert. Like it's really
Top Gear with the clap music and the whole car. This is so dangerous. Why would anyone do this?
Okay, I guess we should start this.
There was one other thing I was gonna say.
What?
So when my alternator pulley locked up,
yeah,
I didn't have the extra one at work.
Yeah,
so I got to take home an all-road.
Oh, how was that?
That had it.
Yeah.
Well, the other nice thing was it had virtual cockpit, the sport package, and the 19 speaker. Bang & Olufsen. Dude, holy fuck! I was like blowing my eardrums out the whole way home and the whole way back to work the next morning. It was incredible.
Yeah, but aren't they all 2 liters now?
Yeah, they moved though.
Yeah, but that 2.7 turbo.
Well, it's also the A4 all-road, not the A6 all-road.
Yeah, it's a smaller
one. Didn't the A4 all-road used to come with a 2.7?
No, that was the A6 all-road platform. Yeah. There was never an A4 all-road before 2000.
Yeah, that's only recent.
Before the B8 platform.
Oh, that's right.
So how many miles is it between your work and home?
About 28.
28. So you have to explain to your boss why there's 100 miles on the on the Audi. Okay, well, this is Gear Clash episode 3. My name's Tyler.
This is Ryan. I'm still impressed we made it this far.
And I'm John. I am too.
Well, I'm always impressed that we actually have like content to talk about. So
Tyler's just impressed that we keep showing back up to record.
that too. Anything new with you guys this week? No.
Well, I found my 10mm I lost last week.
Oh, is it part of the 10mm set? 9 of 10 found?
Yeah. No, I was doing my wastegate on my S60R, and I was tightening it up. And as I was pulling the socket and the wrench off the wastegate bolt, I just heard tink, and there was no more 10mm. I drove it on my road up and down, went over as many bumps as I could. It didn't shake out. I'm like, great. It's getting dark. I'll never find this socket. I don't want to buy a new one. So I didn't drive my car for a week. And then last Friday, I got home with just enough light. I jacked it up. I went underneath it and started feeling around. And right on top of the transfer case, there's a little valley. And I felt my 10mm. So, yeah, now my set's complete again.
That's the stowaway for your 10 mils. That's why they
Yeah, that's the 10mm catch feature.
Small victories.
Yeah, nothing new with me that much. Over the weekend, on the BRZ, I had my one buddy who he does like machine work for. It's like out of his house. He does like custom shift knobs and reverse lockouts and stuff like that for whatever you have. His biggest market is like Volkswagen, Focus, Subarus, and all that stuff. And he's been wanting to do ones for BRZs, and he made prototypes of the reverse lockout for my car. And I have it on my car right now. I put it on Sunday. We were test fitting it. It's a plastic one right now, just to see how it fits and make sure there's no rattling or anything like that. And it fits fine, so he's gonna make the full titanium one this week, and we're gonna pop that on there, take photos of it, and he's gonna start selling those soon. And I also got I changed out my handbrake button on it to accent the interior. It's like the normal button on the handbrake is just like a mirrored chrome looking button, but I got it now to match the interior, which is black with red stitching. So the button now is all black and it's knurled, and then around just before the tip, it's got a red like pinstripe kind of around the end, so it matches the interior now.
Very cool.
And then he also is working on a e-brake handle for me that's gonna be all metal, not plastic, and that should be pretty cool. But that's about it. And then I'm ordering AMSOIL through him because I can get it cheaper through him. But that's about it. All I've really done with my cars. Anything with you, Ryan?
Yeah, on Friday I was getting ready to leave from work, and the battery not charging light came on the dash. It's always a fun time.
That means you need a battery, right?
Turns out the alternator pulley sort of decided to give up. But at 142,000 miles, I can't particularly be that mad at it.
My Chevy's still going. It's got 220 on it.
That's enough out of you. But fortunately, I had an extra pulley laying around, and the alternator's still good, and it didn't completely fry my battery, so
and
could have been worse.
Tell listeners what you got to drive home that night.
Fortunately enough, being a dealer technician, and they need us to come to work the next day, and the fact that I had an extra part at home, I was able to drive one of the new 2018 All-Roads home, which was thoroughly enjoyable. That has the 7-speed dual clutch trans, just like the A4, A5, and Q5, 2-liter turbo. This one had the sport package, virtual cockpit, which is the digital dash, and the Audi's new revised Bang & Olufsen 19-speaker sound system. And I probably lost a couple years on hearing, but it was worth it. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Do they change the the tuning for the engine on those since it's in a wagon? Like, do they bump up the power a bit or no?
They're not terribly heavier than the normal the A4s or the Q5s. Mm-hmm. The Q5 may actually be heavier. They all put about, I believe it's 254 horsepower and then 273 foot-pounds of torque. Mm-hmm. The Q7 actually runs the same numbers.
And that thing's a behemoth.
It is a behemoth. Excellent word. But that 7-speed dual clutch that they put in the A4, A5, the All-Road, and the Q5 really, it really gets that thing moving. It's really geared well. Mm-hmm. And then so is the gearing and the transmission for the Q7. Mm-hmm. Plus the fact that it's a twin scroll turbo helps out a lot, gives you all that low-end torque.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, well, let's go straight into the news then. I wanted to touch on this last week, but we were talking about all the other stuff and we forgot about it. But we forgot to mention that during the Detroit Auto Show, Ford, not only did they unveil the Bullitt Mustang and a few other cars in their lineup, but they teased the new Shelby GT500 that's going to be coming out. And all they showed were, like, you saw, like, the rear of it drive away, and you saw, like, little, like, a corner of the headlight as it was driving, and you saw it's got a whole bunch of aero now. They really focused on, like, the hood has heat extractors and has an actual, like, fixed wing on the back now. It looks very, like, very track oriented as opposed to being, like, raw horsepower. But then at the end of the teaser, they're, like, 700 plus horsepower. So, like, who knows if they're gonna try to be, like, something track oriented, or if they're focus on just, like, burnouts and quarter mile times and all that stuff. But it looks, I'm excited to see what it actually looks like. I'm pretty sure we'll see it at probably the New York Auto Show, which I go to every year, so I'll be glad to get up and personal with it, you know. You guys have any opinions on the new GT?
Agreed. I think it's going to be a very interesting addition to the lineup. You know, they've really got a very wide model range for the Mustangs now, starting with the EcoBoost. They no longer have the V6 for 2018. You know, you got your GT Fastback with the 5-liter. Now, in addition to the Sport Package, is also available with magnetic ride dampers. So, you know, Ford's really given buyers a lot of options. Then you got the next step up with the GT350. It'll be interesting to see what kind of mid-cycle updates that gets, even though it's sort of got a little bit of a different face already than, you know, the Mustang GT. But
well, that's what I'm curious about. Like, when they release the new GT500, they're saying it's going to be starting in 2019 as a 2020 model year vehicle. I'm wondering if they're not going to have the GT350 available in that model year, and it's just going to be like they're going to focus on the GT500 if they're going to want to try to do like one GT car at a time whenever one's out.
I think there's going to be both, because they said it's going to share the same basic platform and engine, but it's going to be the 5.2 supercharged V8. And apparently it's not going, even though it's shared with the 350 and 350R, it's not going to have a flat plane crank.
That is horrifically disappointing, because that thing sounds absolutely glorious.
Yeah, I see that they had the leaked photo on Instagram. It showed a supercharged version of the GT350 engine. I think that Ford has, like, been coming around a lot lately. Like, years ago, I wouldn't care to, like, own a Mustang. Like, I've always been more of a Camaro guy, but
you owned a Mustang.
I owned a Mustang, and
you still.
I wasn't a Mustang guy, but I did own a Mustang.
I've always been more of, like, a GM fan, but in regards to the new Mustang, it's really come around, and I like it a lot more than I did when it first got unveiled a couple of years ago. I just hope everybody, like, all the big three, Ford, GM, and Dodge, everybody's, like, trying to up the ante. Like, oh, they got 707 horsepower, I'm gonna have 708 horsepower, just like, you know, 720 horsepower. Like, everybody's, like, trying to be better than Dodge with the Hellcat, and I feel like after a while that's gonna, like, get boring and old. That's, like, the GT500 is cool, but I still have a feeling I'm gonna be the guy who would rather have the GT350 in the end. But I still think it's obviously gonna sell well. I mean, they've never had an issue with those GT500s.
Right. I mean, that's also one of the fun things that, you know, all these cars that are now competing with each other. You know, you've got the Camaro and the Mustang that are more track focused than, you know, the Hellcat or the Demon. I don't really think. I think they'd make the GT350 more so to compete with the Camaro. I guess it would possibly be the ZL1 or the Z28 or
ZL1 1LE. It'd be
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare up because the Camaro has been dominating rather in a lot of the recent head-to-heads. But the other big thing about this craze that is fun is that a lot more of these cars are more affordable to the public rather than us just watching the next, 1,000 to 1,500 horsepower hypercar come out that, most people can't even dream of, and the fact that they're all going to be, garage queens.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I see Hellcats, I see a few a week, whereas if it was like, some supercar coming out with that much power, you'd be lucky if you see like one in a whole year.
Absolutely.
They're a way more obtainable purchase for your average blue-collar
enthusiast.
Yeah, there you go.
But they did,
or white-collar too.
They did put a little Easter egg in the one brochure for the GT500 saying probably how much horsepower it's going to have.
I didn't see that. Where was that leaked with that article?
I saw it in a different post, I think, but the way they did they unveiled secretively the 2017 GT specs for like 450 horsepower or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They put in the brochure a picture of the dashboard. It was in fourth gear going like 45 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. So it's like 445, and then bumped it up to 450 when the car came out. And in this brochure, it had it in seventh gear going 72 miles an hour.
Okay.
So I'm curious to see if it's actually going to be that or if it's going to be closer to 700.
And if it's in seventh gear, God, I hope they offer a stick. Like, I could totally see them being like, we're going to 8-speed transmission.
Oh, well, with the GT350 being available in manual, I can't see it not being an option. I know the Camaro ZL1,
they have a 9-speed.
a 9-speed automatic, or we could see the 10-speed that Ford just came out with.
That's shared between Ford and GM, I believe, that one.
Yes,
yeah.
That's correct.
I think is that the Camaro. I think that might be the Camaro one, actually.
I also want to say that might be in the new Ford GT.
Yeah, that's
research, guys. Yeah, research.
Whatever. Well, if we're wrong, we're wrong. But yeah, I know that does have a dual clutch transmission. Okay, let's move on. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is it a 10-speed dual? I thought it was just a regular automatic, not a dual clutch.
Here we go. Research at its finest.
I don't think anyone cares about automatic transmissions. Let's move on to the McLarens, which have automatic transmissions.
There's only one real McLaren, and that's the F1 in John's eyes.
Well, the other ones are real too. They just forgot the transmissions in them.
It is.
Bueller.
I know. Sorry. 7-speed dual clutch. Okay. So that's a Ford transmission in that thing. So yeah, 7-speed dual clutch.
In which car?
The Ford GT.
Okay.
Okay, next topic. I thought this was pretty cool. McLaren unveiled
the track packs.
Yeah, a bunch of road cars that have all this, we'll call racing attire on, but they're completely road legal. And what McLaren is doing here is they're trying to appeal to the guy who likes to drive his car on the road, once in a while, or drive it to work, and then like on the weekends he can take it to the track and doesn't have to really change anything on it. Maybe he'll change to slicks when he's on the track, but that's like about it. And they showed these cars with aftermarket like GT4-esque hoods fixed rear wings, rear diffusers, and everything's all like carbon fiber. They haven't released pricing on this, but it's basically like pick what parts you want and make your like track built I almost said 911. Your track built McLaren. And okay, Ryan, we got past the Ford. You're over here like trying to
Accuracy is key.
Okay, Ryan was too busy being focused on the transmission, the Ford GT. It's a 10-speed.
It is a 10-speed automatic. Okay. Carry on.
Back to McLaren. Okay, but yeah, they're trying to make it so you can like essentially build a road legal McLaren GT4 that you can drive on the streets. They said they're trying to, quote, design and engineer with race car emulation as a primary focus. And they said the stuff like the new wing and everything adds like 200-something pounds of downforce. And
can't have enough of that.
And they also mentioned, you can get racing harnesses inside and everything. Like, you can go all out, it seems, with this. I can only imagine how much it's all going to cost, because you're probably spending at least $50,000 on everything here. I'd imagine if you do like all out, probably closer to $100,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say 50 is a little low. You start adding carbon fiber to that.
I'm sure just the
to
wing,
a McLaren.
Yeah, I'm sure just the like every carbon fiber bit and the hood is probably well over 50, and throw in the harnesses and all that. What do you guys think about this whole set of options they're going to be offering, apparently?
I think it's cool for someone who's actually able to afford it, who's actually going to use it and not just make one a garage queen.
Mm-hmm. I wish more manufacturers would do stuff like this. Like, I feel like the only other manufacturer that gets close to this is like Porsche. Like, Porsche has endless options, but you know, you can get roll cages in your GT3 if you want, and stuff like that. And like, GT3 RSs, for example, they already have like roll cages and everything. And the only difference between a GT3 really and the actual cup car is like the cup car is all gutted and everything, and I think they're geared a bit differently. But like the fact that McLaren is offering something like this, I think is really cool for the enthusiast market.
Did you see the new 570S track pack?
The
McLaren?
No, I don't think I did. Was that this past week or?
I'm not sure if it was this week. It might have been a couple weeks ago. But they have the normal 570, and then they have a track pack which is lighter. It's got a lot more carbon fiber. The seats are carbon fiber. They replaced a lot of the leather with Alcantara. I guess it saved a little bit of weight.
Yeah, I think that came out. I was looking at here. That came out they reviewed it last summer.
Are you sure?
Well, that's a British review. Like on Top Gear here, they say that was reviewed last summer.
Because this article was from like a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Well, it could be U.S., but continue.
I just think it's nice that they're also offering in, that model too, like a track pack.
Like an in-between like complete road car and track car. They have like the in-between of that kind of like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else on McLaren?
Nope, I don't think so.
This other news article isn't a shocker. Mercedes, they just announced they're no longer going to be selling Mercedes diesels in the U.S. because, quote, the market isn't there in the U.S. Like, they don't have enough buyers. There's not enough interest in the Mercedes market. I'm not surprised this is happening. Even if that was false, like like it's not because of interest. I feel like a lot of people are having trouble, especially in America, trusting these German manufacturers with their diesels ever since Volkswagen started Dieselgate and lied about the emissions and everything. It's not even really, honestly, a big deal, like, to say you or me, but because their cars work, it's nothing like their cars aren't working fine or whatever. It's just that what's coming out of the tailpipe isn't super clean as they claimed it to be.
Correct.
But people, I guess, don't want to trust any diesels anymore because of everything that Volkswagen and Audi started. What are your guys' opinions on the Mercedes diesels?
I'm not particularly surprised. I don't think in recent history Mercedes diesels were a particularly strong seller.
Not in the U.S. at least.
Exactly. And I don't really think they would have been staying in until 2020 anyway, even if hypothetically Dieselgate hadn't happened.
I remember hearing through sources and training that Porsche was gonna actually, right before the whole Dieselgate thing happened, Porsche was supposedly gonna be bringing their V8 diesels to the U.S. Then that all happened, and they're like, nope. They pulled the plug on that, yeah. And that would have been awesome.
Yeah,
V8 turbo diesel.
Unfortunately, we're very much looking forward to the new Q7 drives phenomenal compared to the old one. And we're very excited to get the chance to drive them with the diesels in it, with all the torque, and that just hasn't happened. Because, you know, we're not going to be getting them. Granted, the supercharged 3-liter is an excellent motor, but...
What was the one they had in the Touareg that was a diesel? Was the big one?
The V10?
Yeah, the V10. Did they put that in any Audis too, or no?
Only in Europe.
Okay.
Didn't they have a V12 diesel?
Yes, in Europe.
That was a W12, right?
I don't know if they put the W12 in the Q7. I know they put it in the A8. But they probably did put it in the Q7, but we never got it here. They also did in Europe a V12 turbo diesel in the Q7.
Oh, wow. But I'm wondering if did they ever do the G-Wagon diesel in the U.S.?
Probably at some point.
At some point. Because I'm wondering, like, I don't know, like if they kept the diesels in the U.S., if they would have possibly brought the G-Wagon diesel, because I think they took a break from doing the G-Wagon diesel in the U.S. market. I could be wrong, but... and then over the weekend, I watched a 24 Hours Daytona Rolex race. Ryan watched it.
I was there.
Too. Yep.
I was standing online at a brewery.
Race was pretty good. I watched most of the race. The last 8 hours or so I probably missed because the coverage, honestly, of those races is always awful. Always awful. You always have to be like, okay, this part of the race is on Fox Sports 1. This part of the race is on Fox Sports 2. This part of the race is on app. And I can't get that app because I don't have that app on my iPad or anything. And you can't find any live streams online, so it's really annoying to try to watch the race. But at the end of the race, Cadillac, no surprise, won in the prototype class. They won last year, too. Ford won in the GTLM class. And I believe in the GTD class, Lamborghini won. And I think Acura followed them in second with the NSX. So I was really hoping Porsche would win. I think they came in like 6th or somewhere down there.
I think you're a little biased.
Why? Because I work there?
Maybe.
No, honestly, I'm really glad to see Ford win because I really like the GT a lot. I think that's...
And welcome back to the not Ford-sponsored podcast.
But I'm really glad to see the Ford GT win. That car's been doing Ford really good. I know at first they had some problems with it, but after those first few hiccups, it's been really good in racing and been very competitive. Also, in the beginning of the race, they had a 911 that like crashed somehow. I didn't read too much on it, but it was like right at the beginning of the race. I'm like, it's living up to the Widowmaker name, and the race just started. Anything else on that, Ryan? I know John doesn't watch racing, so
No.
Nothing
to add.
Okay, I'm looking forward to the next race they broadcast. That's kind of big. It was 12 Hours of Sebring, and that's one I've always wanted to go to. I've always heard that one's shittiest spectate, though, because it's literally like an old airport, so it's all flat, and spectating isn't the greatest. I was going to try to go to Daytona this year, but other things happened, so that I wasn't able to. But I'm hoping next year I'll be able to go to Daytona. That's one race I definitely want to put on my bucket list. Okay, I guess we should just dive into our main topic.
On the McLaren before?
Yeah.
It is the MSOX, and it's based on the 570S. So when I said 570S, I was mistaken. It was the MSOX.
That is...
And it looks a hell of a lot nicer.
Yeah, that's the thing I was talking about. The 10 road cars that look like race cars but aren't. Yeah, that's I think that's the manufacturer of the carbon fiber, I think. That's what that MSOX is.
Oh, yeah, I just mistakenly said 570S.
Yeah.
See, folks, we're all about accuracy here at Gear Clash.
Well, Wikipedia is supposedly very accurate, I hear. So. Okay, let's get into the main topic. They had a new Grand Tour episode this past week, and I thought it was pretty interesting because they had an old Jaguar XKSS, and it was a Aston Martin. I can't remember the exact model. It was an old like DB4, I believe, or DB5, and they're from like the 50s, 60s, and they were like completely 100% brand new old cars. Like Jaguar, they're saying how Jaguar had to like find the blueprints for the cars and make what they could based off the blueprints, and some of them were like missing, so they had to like go off of pictures, and they like got everything down to like the rivets that hold the body panels on and everything down to like 100% accuracy, and recreated the cars. And Aston Martin did a similar thing with the DB4, and then they compared those two cars. That was James and Jeremy. Compared those two cars to... I'm sorry, Jeremy and Richard compared those two cars to what James May had, which was a brand new Civic Type R. And the argument was how old cars versus new cars, like old cars are better or new cars are better in this way. And me, I'd rather have the old cars. That's me. But the Type R is still pretty cool car. I know, John, you have a bunch of those at work that come.
Yep, and he's afraid to drive one because of how bad he might want one.
Yeah, because if I drive one and fall in love with it, I am like 10 feet away from the sales desk, and I might be driving home in one.
I like them. I just don't like... I wish they wouldn't do the 20-inch wheels on those things, but...
Yeah, as much as I know a lot of people are going to hate me for saying this, if I got it, I would want it to look more like an SI and not like
a sleeper Type R.
Yeah, I don't need 300 carbon fiber accents and bumpers on bumpers on bumpers and spoilers on spoilers on spoilers. It's a little too much.
You don't want more canards?
No.
Everyone always wants more canards.
I would rather it look a little sporty, but not like, it might have 900 horsepower, but you're not sure. And then
But yeah, the Grand Tour episode though, the remaking of the classic cars, not just like, oh, we're gonna bring back a name and make it as a new car, but the fact that they actually remade the classic cars, and then I can only imagine the prices on them, but then sold them, made me think of like, okay, well, what cars would we like to see be remade again? I know, like, I could list like 20, but I said we all had to pick 3 cars. So, what did you pick, John? We'll start with you.
Well,
Volvo.
No, actually, no Volvos on the list. My first car is an F40, but I think that's everyone would like to see that come back.
I was almost
exactly the same.
I was almost gonna pick that. Then you told me you picked it. I'm like, okay, you can have that one.
I also picked the Jaguar E-Type V12 because that would be an amazing car to see back in production without anything being changed. Maybe more horsepower, but...
Well, it already have more horsepower than any Jaguar E-Type right now because the throttle bodies would all be perfectly tuned, and the car would be running more perfect.
It said back to factory specs, so they all have to be out of adjustment. And then my third was the 944 Turbo.
Okay, yeah, and I wanted to do a 944 also. Like, I'd take any 944. It doesn't even have to be the turbo, but I've always loved the 944. Technically, that's what I own right now. The BRZ is essentially your modern version of a 944 turbo, 4-cylinder, rear-wheel drive coupe.
I wouldn't say the turbo part, though.
I know, yeah, not the turbo part, but it's the same idea, which is a huge part of why I like the BRZ. But even if they made the 968, I've always liked those too, and that was like one of the torquiest, naturally aspirated 4-cylinders when that came out. Those are good picks. The F40 is definitely up there on my list as a car I'd love to see come back again. That, in my opinion, that's the quintessential like Ferrari. Like that's like the
absolutely.
That's like the poster child of Ferrari.
But with the European spec, not the U.S. spec with the weird bumpers and.
Yeah. Well, of course.
But I could do without those fuel bladders that go bad every 10 years on the European spec ones, because they're extremely expensive to replace. I mean, I wouldn't know from experience. I don't own one, but I probably couldn't even afford to replace one of the 2 bladders.
Well, it's like the 2 $25,000 ECMs on the Lamborghini Diablos that they don't make anymore.
Oh, they split the banks to have their own.
Yep.
That's like that's like one car I almost picked to be my 3 was the BMW 8 Series, and that also has the split banks where each bank has its own engine management system. Anything else you want to touch on your 3?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay.
I can go on forever, but
Okay.
we don't have enough time.
Okay, what about you, Ryan? What were your 3?
So one's actually from more recent history. Actually, probably all of them are, but I absolutely love the B7 Audi RS4. It's just a high revving, naturally aspirated V8. It came in a sedan or a wagon, and it was just like an absolutely perfect kind of combination that is completely daily drivable
Because it didn't have the timing chain issues.
Yeah, exactly. I actually work with a guy who daily drives one almost 100 miles a day, and he absolutely loves it, and he says he's never going to get rid of it. It's a great car, and absolutely by far one of the most fun.
It was definitely like probably
drive.
My most favorite Audi in the past. Like that, what year was that car? Like
we had them in 2007 and 2008.
Yeah, so yeah, in the past 10 years, that's probably my favorite Audi still.
That's one of mine as well. The other car I'd love to see would be, the Honda S2000. In the day and age where, yes, they've come out with the Civic Type R, which is an absolutely phenomenal front-wheel drive car, but Mazda just re-perfected their Miata. You've got the Americans going absolutely hog wild with horsepower with Chevy, Ford, and Dodge. Kia just came out with the Stinger. We're getting back to those enthusiast kind of roots, but it's fun to see manufacturers do things just because they can, rather than specifically trying to hit a particular market. And that
the big three with just like, oh, let's make a 700 horsepower
exactly
car.
Exactly. And especially that engine when Honda came out with it, I think it finally lost its horsepower per liter record to, I think it was the Ferrari 458.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
That's an astounding thing out of a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. Oh, and number 3.
Come on, there's got to be like 50. Just pick one.
Oh, there are. I'll go with another one and just throw out the RX-7 with the rotary, not an LS swap.
Yeah.
Wait, they make them without LSs?
So I've been told.
These things existed?
Wikipedia said so.
Yeah, well, Wikipedia lies.
What, the 3rd gen or the 4th gen, the last one?
I happen to be a huge fan of the 4th gen.
Okay. There's also the 2nd and 1st gen, but I feel like most people like the 3rd and 4th a lot. But so the 4th gen?
Yes.
Yeah. I always love the FD, like the Spirit Type R.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. See, if I had one of those, I wouldn't want to even swap the LS in it, because at the end of the day, like, yeah, it's more reliable, I get that, but at the end of the day, you basically have a Corvette. And if I wanted that, I would just go buy a Corvette. Same with a LS and a 944 also, like, I'd just buy a Corvette. Like, it's cool, but it's, like, overplayed. Maybe if it was, like, the beginning of, like, LS swaps, like, maybe I'd still find it cool, but I'd rather have a normal power plant that's in the vehicle. But, yeah.
Boring.
But the FD and the 93 Super Turbo, those are always, like, probably some of my favorite Japanese cars. And, yeah, it's definitely a good pick. Okay. Was that it for you, Ryan?
Yep.
Okay. My 3 picks are... The first one is going to be, like, obvious. Mitsubishi Starion. I'd want them to make the wide body again, which was 86 to 89. Some people prefer the narrow body turbo cars, but I always like the wide body ones. Not only do I want them to make them again because they're probably one of my favorite cars ever made, but because you can't even find parts for the cars anymore. And it's annoying, like, oh, hey, I need something as simple as, like, a center console. And it's like, okay, let me search on the groups on Facebook, the forums. Okay, it's been a week. Nobody has one yet. And I'll get, like, people who will contact me and be like, oh, I got one. And then I message them, and then I never hear anything. So it's like, just from a parts standpoint, I would love to have that car be made again.
Tyler just doesn't want to work on his own. He just wants to buy a new one that looks just like his, is what he's saying.
Well, no. Because the one thing I like about mine is it's multi-port injection. Those cars were all throttle body injection. So, like, I'd have to if I bought one, I'd have to at least change it to that so I could have, like, the better throttle response and more power. And the 87 through 88 87 cars, they had an issue too where they the computer would mess up the boost, and it sometimes won't reach full boost because there's an issue with the computer. So what a lot of guys do is they put the 88 or 89 engine control management systems into the 87s. Mine obviously doesn't have that problem, though, because it's not throttle body injection anymore. It's all micro squirt and all that stuff. But, yeah, Mitsubishi Starion is number 1 for me. Number 2 has to be the Audi Quattro. The Audi Quattro S1 that, like, Walter Roll is famous for racing up Pikes Peak. Like, if you, like, consider all cars ever made, race cars, concept cars, that Audi Sports Quattro S1 is probably my favorite car ever made. It's one of the, like, most insane cars. I love watching the videos of that thing back in the day. You just hear the turbos and the gear whine, and it's such a raw, menacing car. Like, nothing looks like that car. The closest thing to that car is, like, maybe one of the other Group B cars, like one of the Renaults or something they raced back then. But that car is just so boxy and wide and aggressive. I love that car. It's always been a favorite of mine. And even on the road-going version, like the Your Quattro, would be awesome if Audi like made those again. And those are starting to go up in value right now too, because a lot of people are like our age are starting to like desire those and buy those and drive the market up in the Audi Your Quattros. And then my third favorite car that I'd like to see brought back was kind of tough. I was going to pick a Jaguar XJ220 because that's just a random, obscure kind of supercar I've always liked. But I decided to go with something a bit more obtainable. And I would really like to see what would be Nissan now make the Datsun 240Z again. That car is one of the most timeless designs in automotive history. I think it's right up there probably with like say the 911 and stuff like that. It's a design that was like still like relative today with the 370Z. But I've always liked the 240Z because it's always the smallest car, and it was the smallest, lightest car they made. And in my opinion, that was the best looking body style because right around like the 260s and 280s, I didn't really like how the bumpers looked on those cars and stuff. And they had like the 280ZX, which was like the 2+2. But the 240s were always one of the best looking, not only Japanese cars, but one of the best looking cars ever made. And I remember John and I were at Harry's U-Pull a couple of years ago, and there was two 240Zs sitting there.
There was like 3 200s, like 2 240s. It was just like a Nissan or Datsun graveyard.
Yeah, and like everything was like pulled on them. I'm like, oh man, they got that. And I knew there were 240Zs because like you couldn't recognize it if it was a 240Z or a 280 because everything was like pulled off of it. But you like look inside and you see like the manual choke, and you're like, oh, it's a 240. But
and Tyler's brother has a comment on what car he wants to bring back.
Yeah, my brother's in the background here. He would, just so listeners know, he would like to see the Lotus Esprit brought back.
Probably the V8, right?
The V8 twin turbo.
That comes with an LS, right?
Yeah, I think so.
That comes
might be an LT one.
That comes with one of those fix-it kits, like that Mercedes 600 Grosser we talked about. They just ship you a whole nother like car in pieces. But that would be another cool car too, though. Honestly, the Esprit, even the older, like the old James Bond like style one that went underwater. I can't remember what movie it was. It was the white one though. That's when they had like a 4-cylinder in them. Those were really cool. But yeah, those were my 3 cars. The crap. What was the last one I just said I did?
The Datsun.
The Datsun, the Starion, and the Audi Your Quattro. Those are big favorites in my list, and I'd love to see those 3 brought back. Okay. Anything else, guys, you want to close out with? Anything else?
Oh, one bit of news that I have heard floating around a little bit that I have no concrete evidence on yet is that right now Audi is rumored to be bringing soon another RS model here to the States that we have not had before. So there's a lot of speculation right now whether it may be the RS6 Avant or possibly the newly debuted B9 RS4 Avant. But it's very exciting news that Audi could possibly have a new fast wagon here, especially with their own heritage with fast wagons and hatchbacks.
They don't do the RS3 Sportback wagon here, right?
Unfortunately not.
That would be cool if they did that.
It would. You'd get a lot more headroom and such in the back seat, but...
And didn't they do in Europe, didn't they do didn't they used to do an A3 two-door hatchback?
Yes, they did.
And do they still make that?
Yes, they do.
And do they do an RS one of that over there?
That I don't know. I think it's only the sedan and then the five-door hatchback.
Okay, I just wanted to mention this tonight too. In regards to our main topic, one of our followers, Knife Informer James, who's James McIntosh, he's a former host on a podcast I listen to a lot called Crank Journal, and he used to be a host on a podcast called Top Dead Centered, which has been stabbed multiple times and left in a ditch. That's a whole nother story, but he picked for his three
one that I wanted to pick, but I didn't want to sound like a Volvo nerd.
You always sound like a Volvo nerd.
Well, I could have said Porsche 930, like I was thinking of doing, and Porsche 928. But he said Volvo 850 T5R. Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4, which a good friend of mine owns, and I love those cars.
Yep.
Ryan knows him too. And BMW E34 M5, the earlier BMWs with like the prominent grill, like on the 6 Series here in the photo I put up on Instagram. But those are all very good picks. Anything else, guys, or is that it?
Yeah, I'll do my best to find out any more information I can about the impending RS model. Hopefully we'll have an update for next week.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I've got.
You got anything, John?
Nope.
Okay. A couple things about the podcast we wanted to update our listeners about. We're going to try now. We've been recording Mondays and putting the episodes out on Wednesdays. But what we're going to do is record on Wednesdays and have them up on Friday. We have to do this because our schedules are so crazy that Wednesday is the one day that honestly works the best for all of us.
And it'll help us be able to put out the most consistent content we can.
Exactly. And so you can plan on starting next week seeing the episodes come up on Friday, and we'll be recording Wednesday. So Wednesday you can look for posts mentioning listener questions and such. And then this weekend, I'm hoping to have the podcasts up on Google and on SoundCloud. So look for them on SoundCloud, Google, iTunes, and SoundEngine as well.
And soon to be SoundEngine if we ever make one.
But now, coming out on Fridays, you can listen to it on your drive home from work. You can throw it on while you're wrenching in the garage,
And another thing,
enjoy it over the weekend.
And another thing I'm thinking about possibly doing is throwing it up on YouTube, because I know some podcasts out there just throw the audio up on YouTube, which may not be a bad idea either.
Sure.
You want to plug your names again? Ryan on Instagram is
back to the drawing board. Underscores in between all the words.
Mine is John Agee, all one word.
And mine is Hoosier Daddy RS with underscores between the words. And then you can follow our podcast on Gear Clash on Facebook and on @GearClash on Instagram. Okay, guys. I think that's it. Have a good night. We'll see you next week.